Welcome to the third and final instalment of professional development training. In the previous two sessions, content was delivered to shine a light on alternative theories in adult education. To this, a critical lens from an Aboriginal perspective has been threaded to this narrative to provide some context in why alternative theories and frameworks could be used to refresh your teacher toolkit to bring you closer to an understanding of what an Aboriginal student may bring to the learning environment. Most importantly, the aim of this professional development is to evoke a more reflective and holistic approach to your professional practice. There is a deep well of resources to explore, from scholarly works to perspectives gained by engaging with grassroots people. We talked about that in the last session. This PD is by no means intensive nor extensive, but what I've tried to do is cast an illuminating light on approaches that are a departure from the more prescriptive frameworks currently found in the Australian landscape of adult education. As we approach 2020, it is a timely reminder that as adult educators, there is a place to seek out new ways of knowing, to gain insight and from perspectives that have been dimmed by the structures that dictate us from the place of cultural hegemony. I hope that you have been able to inspire your own light on new ways of knowing, to embed them into your professional practice. In this session, I volunteered a personal lens to take you to a deeper place of understanding First Nations people in this country. I found this to be a very confronting experience. What do I say? Where do I start? How personal do I get? My dilemma. And this harks back to my learning in a diploma of adult education. Know your audience. But in knowing the general underpinnings of my audience, do I take them on my personal journey that will not overwhelm them when I speak of the historic and contemporary issues that are integral to me, my family, and my community experience? I question, will I marginalise my audience to an extent that I lose them? That their voice will shut me down with the vernacular that is a part of the national discourse? I am sorry, but I'm not responsible. I wasn't a part of this. We are doing better now. You've got it so much better now. Just get over it. Just move on. But how do we move on when so much of our life is immersed still in policy imposition that has historically and now in contemporary times continues to disrupt the lives of First Nations people? Could I tell my audience of my family experience in how we construct our lives by living in a parallel world, in a black world and a white one? So many things to say. Should I tell my audience how my grandmother's sisters were removed and were never seen again, and how she would round up her children and send them up the river to hide from the troopers for fear of her children being taken away? Or how my grandmother and my mother hid me, the fair-skinned child of a mixed union, under a bed on the dirt floors of their home on land reserved for Aboriginal people, for fear that I might be taken away? Or how my mother made my sick daughter shower and dress in iron clothes before going to the hospital for treatment, for fear that she may be taken away? Should I say how my aunt and I sat with heavy hearts in 2008, watching the television as Kevin Rudd delivered the apology, and then we turned it off when Brendan Nelson wouldn't? Or how, a decade later, trying to console my daughter when she was carrying her own child, reassuring her that no, you won't be reported to docs because you've missed your prenatal appointment. Despairing as I listened to her reasoning, but Mum, you don't understand, they could take my baby. Reassuring my beautiful, smart daughter that this would not happen. It would not remotely happen, that things were different now, was heartbreaking. But this is how intergenerational trauma operates. I could tell how we are reminded on a daily basis of the historical legacies of our old people, condemned by the hegemony that declared we were a dying race. And I could speak of the policies that dislocated us from our traditional lands, from our songlines and ceremonies, from our law, from our language, from our cultural ways of being. And I could tell my audience that we've never ceded sovereignty, that we've never had a treaty that could provide social justice with economic repatriation. And I could tell you of our aching in not being recognised in this nation's founding document. Do I tell my audience how deeply we were affected this week, hearing about 2 black deaths in custody, one in the Northern Territory and the other in Western Australia, and how these horrible, tragic events opened up, yet again, old wounds from our own town's experiences here in Warana, New South Wales, some 30 years ago, of a young man who died in custody, and that case remains an open case. How we were heartened then, all those years ago, by the announcement of a Royal Commission into Black deaths in custody, and yet 3 decades later there have been 400 deaths in custody since the Commission. How do I explain to my audience that we bury our people too often, too young? Should I tell the despair, knowing that too many of our people languish in poverty, and what poverty can bring to family and community life? How welfare band-aid agents, NGOs, non-government organisations, earn good money from black despair that keep many of our people entrenched in welfare dependency. Or how social houses are built in communities like mine. Caged boxes with grille security bars, with inferior material so that external builders can expand their bottom line. Here in Warana, our town aesthetic has changed forever because policymakers refused to engage with our representatives to build the houses we wanted, to build houses that looked good but suited our environment and our families and our way of being. Should I tell of the imposition of an education policy that has disenfranchised many parents and carers because the policy is so convoluted, negating their grassroots narrative? Or the failure by policymakers to invest in our own local TAFE, failure to improve the crumbling building sends a message. Adult learning is not important in our community. Fortunately though, participation rates tell another story. Aboriginal students are showing up at our local TAFE, seeking knowledge, seeking skills, seeking to improve their lives. In saying this, a lot of work still needs to be done to overcome our disproportionate representation across all spheres of life that will bring us closer to equitable inclusion in this nation's landscape. I'll give you a recent example, just week actually. I helped my husband And I'm so proud of him for doing this, but he wanted to put pen to paper and alert policymakers about the state of our Work for the Dole program here in Bree. A number of years ago now, government stopped local delivery of the Community Development Employment Program, known as the CDEP, in favour of regional entities delivering the program and taking power and control from a local community. We had a good CDEP in Brewarrina. Many participants were in meaningful jobs or undertaking training and further education, and then it stopped. Today, we have CDEP participants languishing, with little or no investment made to implement meaningful programs with supporting education and training that can make our people feel gratified to have some purpose at the end of their working week, working for the dole. My husband said, "Tell them how we feel, Pen, the forgotten people. Tell them how we sit on a bus and drive around town because most days we don't have anything to do. Tell them how we pass time joking around and having a few laughs, because if we didn't, you'd see grown men cry from frustration, despair, and hopelessness." Is this overstating my husband's case? Using too much poetic license for effect? If you were a fly on my wall last week, you would think not. I was discussing recently with my daughter how to improve my narrative with the use of metaphors. And with some time to reflect, I think I found one for today's presentation. I was drawn to the Melbourne Cup, the race that stops a nation. For many of us, for First Nations people, we are running the race of our life, clearing hurdles and breaking free of a finish line that has kept us always to the back of the pack. We are doing this by participating in education and training. My family history is evident of this participation. My daughter has a degree in social science with honours. We have family members with degrees in teaching and health. In fact, last year, my cousin became a doctor. My family will tell you these achievements came from the legacy of our old people who relinquished so much for us to gain. A legacy that is carried in our family DNA. We remember our old people with respect and so much gratitude. I must tell you that we have a widening middle class amidst our First Nations community. And even despite the trappings of financial security gained by good jobs, we're keeping up the good race by maintaining our connections to identity as First Nations people, which could so easily be compromised. What has supported our resilience, our willingness to keep up that good race, to keep it going, is a deep and meaningful friendship with irony. How it has become our best friend. Yes, I did say irony. We as First Nations people, we laugh, and we laugh a lot. We see through the veil of policy failure and use our sense of ironic humour to say to policy makers, to say to those who want to quieten our voices, to subdue us, that in our ways of knowing, that in our ways of being, we will continue to survive and we will continue to laugh out loud, because if we stop, we fulfill those early prophecies of the hegemony that we are a doomed and dying race. The old adage says, laughter is the best medicine, and we have needed strong medicine to sustain us. When you have an Aboriginal student in your classroom, When that student walks through the doors, they can be recognised, just the same as any of your students, by their individuality and by their personal experiences. But for an Aboriginal student, they walk in with the collective consciousness of a community, a First Nations community who have carried the heavy impositions of systems that continue to fail us, to keep us at the back of the pack. With no fixed mandates to uphold prescriptive teaching, you'll recognise that individual, but you will also recognise so much else about them. I will not end this professional development today to speak of our continued oppression as First Nations people. Instead, I will remind you that we are a vibrant and resilient people despite all the hurdles that we encounter on a daily basis. That universally, we are all collectively a part of humanity that seek just the same things: mutual respect, love and happiness, good health, prosperity and purpose. My lens is but one. Seek knowledge, grow and strengthen your teaching practice with an open heart and mind. The journey will take you to challenging places, but in saying this, the journey can also take you to a fertile place of knowing and being. I'd like to thank you today. My many thanks for you today in participating in this professional development. I invite you to share your journey through this I'd like to share your journey through undertaking a reflection assessment, and details will be posted on your account, or email account. And again, thank you very much.